Hello. Hi. Can you believe I think this is our 6th day together? This is awesome. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're new and or watching the recording, I just want to share with you that we started this on August 15th, and there's kind of a system to this series. So if you have time and if you want to, you can go back and watch the previous videos, because one kind of leads to the other. So I just wanted to share that with you. And to say that today also, anything I share is not to take the place of therapy or counseling. It's just to be supportive of it and to support you and helping us all understand ourselves better and how we operate as human beings. So that's the crux of this, and to lead to understanding what self-love truly is and how important it is in our lives. So today we're going to talk about codependency. And I find that this is such an important topic. It's very important. I know that I was teased, and I've said a few times, I'm the queen. The thing is, I really did have deep issues with codependency and how it affected my life. And I know so many people as well. And it feels like it's just a part of who we are. The cause of it is usually based in some kind of trauma, usually in childhood. And in the previous videos, I've talked about what that means for whoever you are. If you had a difficult childhood or suffered some kind of trauma, whether it was a loss of a parent suddenly or abuse issues or whatever, it changes us at that moment. And for me, what happened was excuse me. Oh, got something. Hi, Sherry. Thanks for being here. So we're talking about codependency. And so, as I shared before, depending on what your personality is, your environment, the people around you and everything, you're going to start coping in a certain way. And for someone similar to like my personality, who's a little more introverted, quiet, observant, patient, cares about people, just come into the world with an empathetic type of demeanor. When you're traumatized, it's easy to become or fall into codependency. So what is codependency? If you look it up, you might find kind of different terminology about it. But in essence, it's when someone becomes obsessed with somebody else who has issues, usually addictive issues or alcoholism or whatever. And they are drawn to that person in the beginning, maybe innocently trying to, create a relationship, whatever. But they're drawn to that person subconsciously to try and change them, to try and fix them. And when we grew up, we were, let's say, for me, being traumatized by my father, who was a very high-functioning alcoholic. And so it kind of embedded in me to want to recreate. It's a subconscious thing. We want to recreate and fix that scenario, right? We want to fix that scenario. So I developed characteristics which go along with codependency of, I've got to fix them or they won't love me. I got to do what they say or they'll be mad at me. I've got to keep the peace. I've got to juggle everything. I've got to do all the work. So we take on not only our responsibility, but their responsibility, thinking somehow, some way that's going to fix them. And that can make a person become very resentful. It can even make a person sick because they're running themselves ragged, trying to fix a situation that can't be fixed like that. So here's something to consider. See if you can envision this. This was something that I saw this scenario. Someone kind of acted this out. But just envision this. And we'll just do a typical heterosexual family. Okay, so imagine the father sitting in the chair and he's staring at something in front of him. And that would be his addiction. That's his obsession, whatever it might be. Drugs, alcohol, pornography, power, money, whatever. He's staring at that because that's his fix, right? And then imagine the wife behind him standing with her hands on his head, trying to force him to look the other way. And she can't do it. She's trying, but she can't. And then imagine children at the feet of the mother and the father trying to get their attention. So when I saw that little blurb of a scenario, I thought, boy, that's perfect. That says it all, doesn't it? It really does. So in my situation and many others, it's very similar that we want, whether it's a marriage or friendships or working situation, we want to keep the peace. We want to make things going. We will do anything anybody says at the risk of our own health. That's kind of dangerous. That's a very dangerous place to be. And I just got to do a side note for a second is I'm not feeling real well today, so I'm going to make this a shorter video today. So just bear with me. I just wanted to say that. But so in my situation, anybody I was in contact with, friends, family members, whatever, and when I started dating and got married, that paradigm was stuck in me. I had to keep the peace. I had to be quiet. I had to do everything everybody said. I had to be obedient. I had to volunteer for everything. I had to do all the work for everybody. And if I didn't, it meant people would be mad at me. They'd be angry with me. They wouldn't like me. They'd be upset with me. And in my belief system, it was like, I can't let that happen. Now, why couldn't I let that happen? Why couldn't I let the chips fall where they may? It's because I didn't have healthy boundaries at all. I didn't have the right boundaries. I didn't know it was okay to say no. I didn't understand that I wasn't responsible for anybody else's feelings. You know, when we're coming from a place of love and consideration and respect toward another person, and they happen to get angry at us because we can't fulfill their every wish or do what they say or volunteer or stay late for work, whatever it might be, you know that you're coming from a place of integrity, right? You're not responsible for their feelings or behavior. That's on them. And it kind of shows a lot about the other person that if they don't respect your boundaries or your reasons why you can't help at that moment or stay late for work at that moment or whatever, they have weak boundaries themselves. They lack the respect and regard of other people. And that is so important to understand. So the healing of codependency really is understanding, again, all connects, right? It all connects. Everything we've talked about so far all connects. It's understanding your emotional well-being. And it's understanding how you can get emotionally healthy and more intelligent in that way, to love yourself. And it's so important that we love ourselves, right? We keep forgetting that that's an important thing to do in our lives. And when we love ourselves, it has to do with dignity and respect and honoring ourselves and honoring if we're not feeling well to take care of ourselves. If honoring, we have other commitments, we can't commit to something else. And we can respect that with other people, right? No, in my marriage, I did share, and I'm not going to go into detail, but it was a difficult marriage. It was on and off, good, bad, whatever, for different reasons. But for a lot of that time, I was the one juggling everything, trying to make it work, trying to be a better wife, trying to be a better mother, trying to be a better person. And I'm like thinking that this was all on my shoulders because that's what I was led to believe. That's what I was, told to believe, and or thought to believe, and it wasn't. And it was during this time in my marriage where it got so overwhelming and so difficult and confusing. And I think I really am so fortunate and feel so thankful that I was able to be in therapy at that time, because it really helped guide me. Because my feelings, my emotions were telling me something. They were telling a story about what was inside me, and I wasn't paying attention. To tease that out and understand these feelings of a false belief system, that I was responsible for other people and their feelings as adults, and I wasn't. So that got me on the train to healing and recovery and building strong, healthy boundaries. Now, I will say, when you've been in this mode for years of codependency, it's not easy to change. It's not easy to create boundaries, but it's vital that we do. And it'll feel different. You might even feel guilty because you're not jumping to attention, or you're not responding to somebody's selfish needs or whatever it might be, because you realize they're not doing the work to make things better. They're not putting in the work to help themselves and see themselves and have self-awareness. They're just putting it all on you, the codependent, to try and make them happy. Well, we know that that's never going to be, right? No one is ever going to be perfect enough to make that kind of person happy. It doesn't exist. So it does feel, I'm going to be honest, it does feel strange. It does feel different. It does feel weird, because the guilt might come in, or you might feel like, I don't know how to say no, because the fear will come in. You're afraid something bad's going to happen, or they're going to be so angry, or they'll never like you again. Again, this can be coworker, friends, neighbors, family, spouse, partner. That's because, remember, this part of the brain, that's what it's used to. That's the set degree for you, is this paradigm belief of being a codependent. What we need to do is override this and get this going, right? The thinking part of the brain, the analytical part of the brain, the reasoning part of the brain. Because when this takes over, the primitive part of the brain, it can make you feel so, it's gonna keep pulling you back to the status quo of what you're used to. Because when you start to feel a little nervous or guilty because you're starting to develop your own boundaries and respecting your own voice and respecting your own time and attention and care and concern, it does feel different. But once you get into that pattern and habit, pretty soon it begins to feel back to normal, how we're supposed to be. And that is the best part. That is the best part. Now, it doesn't mean we won't be manipulated or tricked into those behaviors again by a person who might have narcissistic personality disorder. Empaths tend to be, people who are just born with more sensitivities that way, more empathetic and compassionate. Some are born more than others. It doesn't mean they aren't that way. It just means some of us are just a little more lean toward that. And we are prime targets for those kind of people in life. I hate to say it, but we are. So we have to be careful and be on our guard, and to understand certain personalities. Because like I said before, we share the world with people who are struggling in their addictions and mental illness and personality disorders. There is a saying, this is an old, kind of spiritual saying, is, love the sinner, hate the sin. So the thing is, we don't have to go along with their bad behavior. We don't have to go along with their abuse or narcissistic tendencies or whatever it is. but we don't have to hate them either. And that's kind of what we tend to do in our society, is blast them and hate them and judge them and be mean to them and call them names. And I don't think that's necessary. I think in moments we might feel that way, the anger or the frustration, because we've been hoodwinked, we've been hurt, we've been betrayed. And yes, in those moments that makes sense. But what we need to do is focus more on how we can change and be better, and focus on healing ourselves and that recovery, and understanding, how did we get in that position in the first place? How did that happen? Well, part of it is when we realize what's going on, when we finally wake up to the fact, because pain is our teacher, when we finally wake up to the fact, it's like, oh my gosh, we want to blame and yell and be angry and all that, which in a moment might be necessary. I understand. But again, we have to go back to, how did I get there? How did I allow myself to get into this position? What was going on inside me? What was I thinking and feeling? And again, it goes back to those paradigms that are deeply embedded, and that they will run our life. And it's not knowing, it's like having the blinders on and we're not aware quite what's happening. We just know we're guided. We're just kind of like magnets attracted to that scenario. And it's best to pull back and take a breath, feel what you have to feel in those moments of angst and upset and anger. But again, it's so important to go back to sitting in self-love, asking ourselves the question, how did I get in this position? What was going on? How did I allow it? Well, we allow it because we're living by default. We're allowing because we're living in that extreme paradigm of others' expectations of us. Again, it goes back to childhood. It goes back to trauma. It goes back to the stories we have to make up about ourselves, because there's no adult helping us out through these moments of great distress in our lives as children. So we create these scenarios and these belief systems and these stories. And again, like I said, we then build these coping mechanisms around that, and then we drag those into adulthood. I don't service anymore in adulthood, but we don't know that. That's the thing. This isn't about judging or blaming ourselves either at all. That's not it at all. It's just about becoming aware and then taking the choice and making the choice to turn the corner and make changes within ourselves. Now, that might mean reading some books. That might mean, seeing a counselor or a therapist for a while. Whatever works for you is what's important. And I know my got a glitch in my Wi-Fi. Sorry about that. So what that means is taking care of yourself and doing what it takes to get you the help that you need, and so that you can build those healthy boundaries and you get to know yourself more. And that's the fun of it too. When we begin to take responsibility for ourselves, it's amazing, because it's so freeing, believe it or not. Some people are afraid of that. Some people are afraid of taking responsibility for themselves. And those people tend to be the ones who are always the victim in life. They're always the victim, which is a bad mindset to have, but they set themselves up that way. So, and it's unfortunate. It really is. But I'm here to tell you that there is help and hope if you feel like you're codependent, if you feel like you're in a relationship with someone who's addicted or under the influence all the time. They might be high functioning, but they're under the influence, and you feel like you have to fix them and you have to make them see the light and shame them or talk to them or try and reason with them. But we can't, because one of the first things you're going to learn in an Al-Anon meeting is you can't reason with a pill or a bottle. It doesn't work that way. Because someone who's under the influence doesn't have they're not thinking in their right mind. They're under the influence of something. So they're not able to even comprehend what you're saying. And if there's somebody who's disordered or has a mental illness, or feel like, they're the king of the world, perhaps narcissistic traits, they're not going to want to hear that there's something wrong with them. They won't believe it. So we need to get help. We're the ones who have to be the adult in the room and get the help we need. If that's attending a support group, like I said, or reading some books, or talking to a counselor or a therapist, or getting a coach, whatever that looks like for you, that is a wonderful place to start. And it's a great place to be, because you will find that you will be loved, you will be understood, you will be led and guided and advised, and you will see yourself in ways that you didn't before. And it opens up like a whole new world. And remember, never judge yourself in these moments. Don't judge yourself in these moments. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to anybody else. Just do your best to be your best and to learn your best. Like I shared before, I led many support groups in codependency. And there's a lot to understand and a lot to know. And I know I'm kind of breezing over some things today. So I am doing it quickly because I'm not feeling my best. So I'm going to cut this short. But I did want to absolutely be on here and help you understand what codependency is. And we don't have to live in fear that way. We don't have to think that if we're not showing up for somebody, or volunteering, or making that cake, or staying late for work because our boss is going to be all over us, and they're not respecting your end of day, which is your contract work dynamic, right? That at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever, you're ready to go home. No one should be asking you to stay without notice and without paying you for it. So that's important to understand. Now, here's the flip side of codependency really quick. We want to be helpful human beings, right? We like to be of service. We don't want to, I know I do, but I like to help when I can. And it comes from a place of love and honesty. It doesn't come from a place of fear and obligation. Like I'm obliged to because they'll be mad at me if I don't, right? But it comes from self-love, self-honoring. It comes from wanting to be helpful and of service, exactly at moments when I can. Now, this excludes extreme emergencies. Of course, we're going to jump right in and help when we can, right? Of course we will. But on any given day, on a normal day, especially if someone can do that thing, what they're asking you to do, but they can do it, just don't want to do it because they know you're going to do it, right? No, we have to understand that people can do things really well for themselves and not let them take advantage of us. So that's the other thing. I am going to go, and I hope all of this has been helpful. I don't mind continuing this conversation. Just let me know in the chat. And codependency is something that is prevalent in our society. And even addicts can be codependent, believe it or not. They can. They're not the evil ones. They're the ones that they can be codependent as well. They can be codependent on the codependent. And that is a wild situation that can happen. So thank you, Sherry. I'll see you Friday. Friday, we may pick this up a lot, a little bit more, but I do want to get in the aspects of shame and where it's hiding in us. And then the following Monday, I want to do something fun and talk about creativity, because I believe it's our life force. It's what we're about, and it's kind of one of the main reasons why we're even here. So I want to make it fun on next Monday. So you guys, I hope you have a great day. Thank you for being here. Take care, and I'll see you Friday.